Welcome to Eternal Love Diaries, where real stories change real lives. Every love carries a story. And here, each one is told from the heart. Today's story follows James, a 38-year-old single father working as a senior accountant at a prestigious firm in Chicago. After losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago, he's been solely focused on raising his 10-year-old daughter Lily and providing her with stability. When his new boss, Victoria, unexpectedly promotes him despite his limited availability for overtime, James is grateful but confused. Their professional relationship takes an unexpected turn when he discovers her crying alone after hours. What begins as a moment of compassion evolves into something neither expected, forcing James to confront his fears about opening his heart again. "I can't do this anymore." The words escaped Victoria's lips as she slumped against her office wall, mascara-stained tears streaming down her face. James froze in the doorway, the quarterly reports he'd stayed late to finish clutched awkwardly in his hands. He'd never seen his always composed boss like this, vulnerable, broken, human. For 3 months since she'd taken over as CFO, Victoria Chen had been nothing but sharp suits, sharper decisions, and the kind of unwavering confidence that intimidated everyone in the accounting department. Victoria's head snapped up, her eyes widening with mortification as she registered his presence. "James, I thought everyone had left." She hastily wiped her cheeks, smearing expensive makeup across her face. The sight struck him harder than he expected, this powerful woman reduced to hiding her pain. It reminded him too much of himself, of the countless nights he'd waited until Lily was asleep before allowing his own grief to surface. Without thinking, he closed the door behind him and set the reports on her desk. "My daughter has this trick," he said quietly, pulling a clean handkerchief from his pocket. "When she's upset, she presses something cold against her eyes for 30 seconds. Reduces the swelling." He handed her the cloth, maintaining a respectful distance. "The break room freezer has those ice packs for lunch boxes. I could grab one, if you'd like." The offer hung between them, simple, practical, yet somehow deeply intimate in its understanding. Victoria stared at him for a long moment, her professional mask completely shattered. "Why are you being kind to me? I've been pushing everyone so hard these past months." Her voice carried a rawness he recognized, the sound of someone who had been carrying too much for too long. James thought of the promotion she'd given him last month, how she'd arranged his schedule to accommodate Lily's school hours without him even asking. "Sometimes the people who seem strongest are fighting the hardest battles," he replied, thinking of his own carefully constructed facade of normalcy. "I don't need to know what's wrong, but if you need someone to just sit with you for a while, I can do that." The words surprised even him. He'd kept everyone at arm's length since Sarah died, focused solely on being there for Lily. Yet something about Victoria's distress called to him, a recognition of shared struggle beneath the professional roles. Victoria's shoulders relaxed slightly as she accepted the handkerchief. "It's my brother's anniversary," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He died 5 years ago today. Car accident. I was supposed to be driving." The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken grief. James felt his chest tighten with familiar pain, the weight of survivor's guilt, the burden of moving forward when someone you love couldn't. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," he offered simply, not elaborating further. He didn't need to. The understanding that passed between them transcended words. For a moment, they were just two people who knew what it meant to rebuild a life around an absence. Victoria nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the shared experience. The office fell quiet, the usual hum of fluorescent lights and distant keyboards replaced by a different kind of energy, something raw and honest. After what felt like both an eternity and no time at all, Victoria straightened her shoulders and took a deep breath. "Thank you, James, for not looking away." The vulnerability in her eyes shifted to something else, a question, perhaps, or a realization. She hesitated, then added softly, "My brother always said life's too short not to be brave. I haven't been very brave lately." Her gaze met his, steady despite her reddened eyes. "There's a charity gala for children's cancer research next Friday. Would you be my date?" The question caught James completely off guard. His mind raced through a dozen practical concerns. Who would watch Lily? Was this crossing a professional line? What would their colleagues think? But beneath those thoughts ran a current of something he hadn't felt in years, possibility. Before he could overthink it, he found himself nodding. I'd like that. But I should warn you, I haven't been to anything fancier than a parent-teacher conference in 3 years. The small joke felt rusty on his tongue, but Victoria's responding smile, genuine and warm, made something in his chest unfurl. The week that followed was a blur of nervous preparation and second thoughts. James found himself standing in front of his closet, staring at the suit he hadn't worn since Sarah's funeral. "Daddy, are you going on a date?" Lily's voice startled him from the doorway, her perceptive eyes missing nothing. He turned to face his daughter, unsure how to navigate this conversation. Since losing her mother, Lily had become fiercely protective of their small family unit, suspicious of any change that might threaten their carefully constructed routine. "It's a work event," he answered carefully, watching her reaction. "My boss invited me to a charity gala." He hesitated, then added, "But yes, it's sort of like a date." Lily's face remained unreadable as she processed this information. James knelt down to her level, heart pounding. "How do you feel about that, Lilypad?" He held his breath, knowing her answer could change everything. Lily had always come first. If she wasn't ready, he would call Victoria and cancel immediately. Lily tilted her head, considering him with a seriousness that sometimes made her seem far older than 10. "Is she nice?" The simple question carried the weight of all her unspoken concerns. James thought about Victoria, her fierce intelligence, the way she'd rearranged meeting schedules to accommodate his parenting responsibilities, how she'd looked when her carefully maintained control had crumbled. "Yes," he answered honestly. "She's nice in the ways that matter." Lily nodded, apparently satisfied with this assessment. "Mom would want you to be happy," she said finally, with the devastating directness of children. "She told me to take care of you, you know, before she went to heaven." The revelation stunned James into silence. In 3 years, Lily had never mentioned having such a conversation with Sarah. Before he could respond, Lily continued pragmatically, "Aunt Jenny can watch me. And you should wear the blue tie. Mom always said it matched your eyes." With that, she turned and skipped away, leaving James staring after her, his heart cracking open in ways he'd thought impossible. Friday evening arrived with alarming speed. James stood on Victoria's doorstep, the blue tie knotted perfectly at his throat, a small bouquet of simple white roses in hand. When she opened the door, he momentarily forgot how to speak. Gone was the severe business attire, replaced by an elegant navy dress that softened her usual sharp edges. "You look beautiful," he managed finally, the words inadequate but sincere. Victoria's smile held a touch of nervousness that matched his own. The gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel, the ballroom transformed into a glittering wonderland of lights and flowers. Throughout the evening, James discovered sides of Victoria he never would have imagined existed beneath her professional exterior. She had a quick, dry wit that matched his own. She listened intently when he spoke about Lily, asking thoughtful questions that showed genuine interest rather than polite obligation. When the conversation turned to their lost loved ones, there was no awkwardness, only quiet understanding. "Do you think it gets easier?" she asked as they swayed gently on the dance floor, her head resting lightly against his shoulder. "Or do we just get better at carrying it?" "Both, maybe," James answered thoughtfully. "But I think the hardest part isn't the grief itself. It's deciding to let new happiness in without feeling like you're betraying them." Victoria's eyes met his, a world of understanding passing between them. In that moment, something shifted, a door opening that both had kept firmly shut for years. As the evening drew to a close, they walked along the hotel's garden path, the spring air cool but pleasant. "Thank you for coming tonight," Victoria said softly. "I know it couldn't have been easy, stepping back into this kind of world." Before he could respond, Victoria stopped walking, turning to face him with unexpected intensity. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice suddenly serious. "Something that might change how you see me." Victoria took a deep breath, her professional composure completely absent now. "The reason I gave you that promotion, arranged your schedule around Lily's needs, it wasn't just because you're good at your job, though you are." She paused, seeming to gather courage. 3 years ago, my brother's foundation funded a pilot program for family support at Chicago Memorial's oncology ward. I was reviewing the impact reports when I saw your name. You and Lily were part of that program when Sarah was in treatment. The revelation hit James like a physical blow. He stepped back, mind racing to process this connection he never could have imagined. You knew, all this time, you knew about Sarah, about us. The thought that their interactions might have been motivated by pity rather than genuine connection made his stomach turn. Victoria reached for his hand, her eyes pleading for understanding. Not at first. I only realized who you were after I became CFO and saw your personnel file. By then, we'd already been working together for weeks. Why didn't you say anything? James asked, struggling to reconcile this new information with everything that had happened between them. Victoria's expression was pained but honest. Because I didn't want it to define how you saw me, or how I saw you. She hesitated, then continued, my brother died because he was texting me while driving. The guilt nearly destroyed me. Working with the foundation, helping families like yours, it's been my way of trying to make something good come from his death. But tonight wasn't about that. Tonight was about us, just us. James stood silent, processing her words. Part of him wanted to walk away, to retreat back into the safety of his carefully controlled life. But another part recognized the courage it took for Victoria to reveal this truth. So what happens now? He asked finally, his voice quiet but steady. Victoria's answer was simple, direct, and brave in its vulnerability. That depends on whether you can forgive me for not telling you sooner. And whether you're willing to see where this might lead, complicated as it is. The moments stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear. James thought of Lily's words, Mom would want you to be happy, and of Sarah herself, who had always lived by the belief that love was worth any risk. I think, he said slowly, reaching for her hand, that we both deserve to find out if there's something here worth exploring. The relief in Victoria's eyes mirrored what he felt in his own heart, the tentative joy of stepping towards something new, something hopeful. 3 months later, as Victoria sat cross-legged on his living room floor helping Lily build an elaborate science project, James watched them from the kitchen doorway. The journey hadn't been simple, navigating their professional relationship, introducing Victoria to Lily's world, learning to trust again, but each step had felt right, felt healing. You're staring, Victoria called out without looking up, a smile in her voice. Lily giggled, glancing between them with approval that had been hard-won but was now freely given. Just thinking about how life surprises you sometimes, James replied, joining them on the floor. How the most unexpected moments can change everything. Victoria's hand found his, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. Like finding your boss crying in her office. She teased gently. James smiled, thinking of how far they'd come from that vulnerable moment. Like finding courage when you least expect it, he corrected, squeezing her hand. In the warm light of his living room, surrounded by the family he had and the family they were becoming, James finally understood. Love wasn't about replacing what was lost, but about expanding what remained. We'd love to know, which country are you watching from? Drop a comment below. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in second chances, show your support by hitting the like button. Subscribe to Eternal Love Diaries for more stories that touch the heart and change perspectives. From Chicago, Illinois, United States, this is Eternal Love Diaries, reminding you that every ending carries the seeds of a new beginning.